If you had to choose between your grieving mother and $200 million, what would you do? Picture this. You're 10 years old. You're standing at your dad's funeral. The woman who gave birth to you is sobbing hysterically, just clinging to you as if her life depends on it. The tension in the room is insane. But then, a lawyer steps forward and drops an absolute bombshell of an ultimatum. It's the kind of moment that would completely break any normal kid. But here's the thing. Our guy isn't a normal kid, because he's literally lived this exact moment before. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are breaking down an absolute masterclass in the regression genre. We're talking ultimate betrayal, insane high-stakes twists dropping basically every 2 minutes, and some of the most satisfying payback you will ever see. We're going to follow Damien's wild journey from an overworked, tragic punching bag destined for an early grave into this untouchable, calculating secret billionaire who completely rewrites his destiny. So buckle up, let's get right into it. Kicking things off with Section 1, the $200 million choice. Look, to really grasp the sheer gravity of what Damien does at that funeral, we have to talk about his past life. In his first go-around, the tragedy was absolute. Standing in front of that massive mountain of cash his dad left behind, he actually fell for his mom's fake tears. He gave her complete control of the money, and what did she do? She took the cash, instantly married some neighbor named Greg, and turned Damien into the family punching bag. It was the ultimate toxic dynamic. The guy had to scavenge for tuition, got kicked out of the house, and was literally worked to death on a construction site at the age of 28. But now, boom, he's reborn. He's back in his 10-year-old body, armed with all those agonizing memories, and he is ready to rewrite history. Which brings us right back to Uncle Walter. He's the dad's trusted lawyer, and he cuts through all the fake mourning with a staggering reality check. Damien's dad left behind an estate worth $200 million. That is a lot of zeros. And Walter lays out a brutal ultimatum. Option A, Damien stays with his mom, Linda, and she manages the cash until he comes of age. Or, option B, Damien chooses to walk away from her entirely, the massive trust fund goes solely to him, and Linda gets absolutely nothing. So Linda is furiously whispering vicious death threats into his ear, literally pinching his arm and demanding he choose her. But Damien? He just looks at the lawyer dead in the eye and coldly states, "I choose the $200 million. Talk about a twist, right? Immediately, Linda's fake grieving widow mask completely shatters. Her sorrow just vaporizes into this raw, violent rage. She actually lunges at her own son, screaming insults, basically proving to the entire funeral hall that she only ever cared about the bag. In a matter of seconds, she loses all custody and all access to the fortune. Now, with the money secured, Damien doesn't just chill. He makes some absolute genius early moves. Using his knowledge of the future, he dumps the entire $200 million into these obscure startups that he knows for a fact are going to become global megacorporations. We're talking companies like Penglatex and Skytrade Holdings. Then he hires this Wall Street shark named Marcus to handle the day-to-day operations, and Damien gives him one strict rule: don't bother me. Because honestly, Damien's ultimate goal in this second life is just to rest. After dying of exhaustion before, he intends to spend his days working out, cooking gourmet food, and living an absolutely lazy, comfortable life while his wealth silently skyrockets into the trillions. Moving right along to Section 2, rejecting the arrogant fiancé. Fast forward a bit. Damien is 18 now. But you know, in a world like this, absolute peace is never permanent. His chill, lazy routine gets violently interrupted by a ghost from his family's past knocking on his door. Enter Vivian Sinclair. She's his fiancée from this old childhood arranged marriage, but she is definitely no blushing bride. She's the 22-year-old CEO of the Sinclair Group, rocking a double doctorate, an absolute heart of ice, and a totally ruthless business philosophy. To her, emotions are just a pathetic weakness. She literally shows up at his house solely to insult him. She looks down on him in his sweaty gym clothes and calls him a lazy parasite who just lives off a trust fund. Vivian actually demands that Damien go to her grandfather and break the engagement, even offering to buy him off with some cushy corporate job. But Damien, he is completely unfazed by her money, her status, or that icy glare. He leans in and delivers this absolutely savage comeback. "I want you to tell your grandfather you're not worthy of me." Boom. He completely flips the script, pointing out that unlike her, living like some soulless corporate machine, he actually enjoys his life. Humiliated and completely furious, Vivian storms out and breaks the engagement herself. And Damien, he just goes back to eating his apple. Classic.
Let's shift gears to Section 3, A Billionaire's Secret Sweetheart. With the Ice Queen officially out of the picture, the whole tone of our story shifts to something incredibly warm and sincere. Damien stumbles into this tiny, hidden, old-fashioned dessert shop called the Royal Kitchen, and he finds the one thing his billions can't buy. The contrast here is night and day, guys. On one side, you have the ruthless Vivian, representing a life of purely transactional, cold relationships. On the other side, we meet Lily. She is the sweet, makeup-free, traditional baker just running her quiet shop. They instantly bond over a plate of osmanthus chestnut cakes, which, crazy enough, is the exact dessert his late dad used to make. They share this deep love for a quiet, unhurried life. Damien practically becomes a permanent fixture in her shop, helping her bake, shedding his cold exterior, and falling deeply in love with someone who actually values genuine connection.
But hey, remember the stakes of this world. Out of nowhere, this spoiled, arrogant rich kid walks into the shop, demands Lily's attention, and when she refuses, he starts smashing the place up. Damien steps in, totally calm. He doesn't even throw a punch. He just pulls out his phone, calls his broker Marcus, and gives a simple order. It takes exactly 5 minutes. 5 minutes for the rich kid's phone to ring, only to learn that his family's entire company has just been wiped off the map. Bankrupted instantly. Wildly satisfying. So after the thug literally crawls out on his knees, Damien turns to a completely shell-shocked Lily. He realizes the gig is up. He can't hide it anymore. He confesses his secret billionaire status, trying to explain the sheer scale of his wealth by saying, "I could probably buy thousands of shops like yours." Lily is stunned, sure, but her reaction is hilarious. She accepts him, but lays down one golden rule. "Damien, listen carefully. From today on, your money is my money, and my money is still my money." She loves him, not for the ridiculous amount of zeros in his bank account. All right, hold onto your hats for Section 4, the Mother's Smear Campaign. If you thought Damien was just going to bake cakes happily ever after, think again. Absolute peace is an illusion. The ghosts of his past, both the arrogant ex and the treacherous mom, are about to return to ruin his sanctuary, and the irony here is just delicious. The Sinclair Group, Vivian's supposedly invincible company, is suddenly facing a catastrophic cash shortage. They are desperately begging for a bailout from this mysterious trillion-dollar mega firm known as Vance Capital. What Vivian absolutely does not know is that the untouchable CEO of Vance Capital is, you guessed it, Damien, the parasite she dumped. So Marcus tells Vivian that if she wants a meeting, she has to come to the Royal Kitchen. Picture Vivian's utter humiliation here. She walks in wearing her sharpest business suit, armed with this desperate pitch, only to find the all-powerful CEO is Damien, and he's happily wearing an apron, his hands covered in flour, cooking dumplings for Lily. When Vivian begs for the investment, Damien casually tosses her proposal right into the trash, looks over at Lily and asks Vivian, "Are we a good match for each other?" He uses her exact arrogant words right against her, completely dismantling her pride in seconds. Well, hell hath no fury like a toxic mother and a humiliated CEO. Linda manages to track down Damien's whereabouts, barges in and demands $10 million, threatening to sue him for abandonment. Damien coldly tells her to get lost. So Linda joins forces with a PR firm secretly backed by Vivian. Together, they launch this vicious, viral fake news campaign. They paint Damien as a greedy traitor who abandoned his devoted mother for a homewrecker like Lily. The internet completely explodes. Netizens start violently attacking Damien online, and they even physically vandalize Lily's shop. Which brings us to the grand finale, Section 5, The Ultimate Revenge. Now, Damien does not panic. He isn't the helpless kid from his past life anymore. He is calculating. He actually lets the internet hate boil to its absolute toxic peak, waiting until they think they've won to set an inescapable trap. Damien calls this massive press conference at a 7-star hotel, inviting hundreds of media outlets. Linda is right there in the front row, smirking, thinking she's about to get paid. Vivian is hiding in the back. But Damien doesn't apologize. Instead, he drops the hammer. He plays hidden audio from 10 years ago. It's Linda whispering those sick death threats at the funeral. Then he pulls up a surveillance video from 1 month after the funeral, showing Linda and Greg popping champagne, laughing and celebrating his father's death. Boom. Live on camera, he completely obliterates her devoted parent narrative. The payoff here is instantaneous and totally devastating. The public backlash sweeps across the country overnight. Linda and Greg, they face years in prison for fraud and child abuse. And as for Vivian,
Because her PR firm was directly tied to the smear campaign, the Sinclair Group stock plummets a catastrophic 30%. Her entire empire is pushed right to the absolute brink of total bankruptcy. Instant karma. Damien achieves absolute, undeniable victory. He legally severs all ties with his toxic mother forever. A completely broken, exhausted Vivian actually calls him one last time to ask if he would have ever gone through with the engagement. He just hangs up on her permanently, telling her she never even tried to understand him. Leaving his enemies in absolute ruins, Damien turns off his phone, walks right back into the kitchen, and returns to cooking dumplings with his true love, Lily.
And that wraps up our explainer. We just watched Damien use his second chance to completely annihilate the people who tried to use him, finally securing a life of peace and genuine love with Lily. But it definitely leaves us with a provocative question to consider. If you had a second chance at life, armed with the painful memories of betrayal, would you be ruthless enough to completely destroy your past to protect your peace? Thanks for hanging out with me for this wild ride, and I hope this deep dive gave you guys a whole lot to think about.